Hey everybody, it's Matt. This episode, we faced a lot of technical difficulties before recording, and I feel really bad because we thought the video would turn out much better than it did, but unfortunately there is a very high lag, very low frame rate throughout the entire video, but luckily the audio is quite intact, so I figured that it would be good enough to upload. I hope that you do enjoy it nonetheless. We had a very fun time filming this episode, and I hope that you enjoy it despite the video quality. We had like an hour and a half of technical difficulties, and hopefully next time we will not face them. So thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy.
Hello.
Hello.
My name is Matt.
My name is Abigail.
And my name is Angela.
And this is the
And this is
Polyglot
the Polyglot
Progress
Podcast.
All right. Well, welcome to episode 19, where today we're going to be talking about language learning while in school or surviving school while learning languages. And this will be it. It's a great topic, which I have many thoughts about. But today we have a guest.
Hello.
Passion for dreaming herself, Angela.
Yeah. So, my name is Angela. As I said in the introduction, I go by Passion for Dreaming on YouTube, and if you hear that in the background, that is my clock singing, because it does that every hour on the hour. But, anyway, my channel is about language learning and language tips. I originally started it before I went abroad for a year to study in Europe. Spent a semester in Spain and France, so I have videos about that. But basically, my channel is about language tips now and some study abroad stuff. So, yeah, it's a little bit about me.
Nice. Well, we're happy to have you here.
Good.
Yeah,
It's good to be here.
So we're just going to start off with what we usually do of just kind of recapping our language updates, but these are going to be kind of weird because I think this podcast goes up at the first few days of August or end of July. So when this goes up, Matt and I will be in or back from Europe, but at the time of filming, we haven't left yet, so they're not totally accurate to.
Yeah, we leave in 5 days at the time of filming this. So we are very excited.
But here's our updates as of now. So Matt, what have you been up to?
Oh, okay. I was actually I was talking to you about this before we even called you, Angela, because I feel like such a hypocrite because I have not done much this summer. I have not done much at all. I have very much been just like, it feels like I'm on a lazy river in my language learning where, I occasionally there will be a waterfall of languages that I kind of just pass through, and that'll be like me listening to German music or like a comedian and then like doing some French, but I have not been on a steady schedule this summer. So I feel very, I need to reignite that, and that's why I'm very glad we're going to Europe, because I think I will wake up and realize, oh yes, this is a thing I should be doing no matter what. But I did just graduate high school, and so I'm like kind of just
congrats.
Thank you. I'm kind of just like reacclimating to life and just trying to keep my head above water, if that makes sense.
In the lazy river
of life, exactly. But yeah, so what about you guys?
I have been doing not much other than German recently, and even I haven't really done a lot of German because as we get closer and closer to the Europe trip, I've had other more pressing things to deal with. So I've been a bit busy with that, but then when I have been studying, it's been a bit of German, so that way I will be able to stay with a host family and hopefully know at least somewhat what's happening around me.
Yeah.
So I've been doing that, and I'm excited to finally get to go to France and Germany and get to use the languages, and then when we get back, I'm hoping to put more into things like Japanese and Spanish and my Bulgarian. So I'm excited for when we come back as well.
Nice.
And then how about you, Angela?
So this summer, I said I was going to be studying Korean and Polish together in addition to trying to maintain Spanish, French, and Portuguese. Yeah. Now, what I have been doing, actually, is I've been maintaining the languages. Spanish I get to maintain pretty easily because my mom speaks it, and then I go over my grandparents who live next door. Mm-hmm. So I get opportunities to speak it. We have Spanish channels on TV. French... So every other day in my diary, I'll write in a different language each day. So one day is like Spanish day, write about all my events of the day in Spanish, then the next day's French, and then the next day's Portuguese, and then I just kind of cycle through that. So, for maintaining languages and such, I've been watching some TV. Haven't really spoken a lot of French or Portuguese this summer, but more listening and writing and everything. As for Korean, I told myself I would do one lesson a day from Talk to Me in Korean, and I did do that in addition to Polish, but then I got so invested in this Polish challenge that I've been doing with Duolingo
Yeah.
to see how much I could learn in 90 days that Korean just kind of got pushed back, unfortunately. But with Polish, I've been doing a little bit of Duolingo every day and trying to make some sentences and things. But that's about where I'm at right now.
Nice, nice. I feel very similar in that I said I was gonna do one thing, and it just got pushed back. Like I said, oh, this summer Hungarian is my thing, and I literally have not opened my book. I opened it to look at it, and I'm like, oh, it's so pretty. There's so many words here, and then I haven't like done a lesson in it, and I'm like, why? But yes. So yes, I'm very excited for the topic that we're going to talk about today because this is one that I think we all probably have quite a bit of experience with, which is
Oh, yeah.
surviving school or at least getting by while learning languages because it is an art in and of itself. So yeah, where do you guys want to begin? I feel like we could start anywhere with this.
Well, I wanted to say, actually, I wanted to start with a little anecdote
Oh, yeah.
where I was sitting in class last semester, and one of my professors asked us, "What have you learned in your 4 years here at school?" And so people were listing different things because he's like, "I hope you've learned something in these 4 years. It could be anything."
Yeah.
And people were listing things, but one girl in my class actually said time management. And he said,
Yes.
"Wow, what is your secret? Because a lot of the other professors at this school don't even have that down, and we're adults."
Oh
So
my
I feel
gosh.
like with school and learning languages, time management is super important. And it's not
Definitely.
always natural. It's a skill that you have to
Mhm.
build up on and work towards.
Definitely, definitely.
Yeah, I definitely say time management is a way to balance both school and language learning. And I almost find it interesting
You
that you
love
said
time
it's not
management.
natural because also I got a comment on my bullet journal
I knew
video.
you were going to talk about this.
Um,
Oh no.
I got a comment on my bullet journal video that was like, "You plan too much, you spend too much time planning, like let things be natural or whatever." And I wrote back this comment and was like, "Well, it only takes me about 5 minutes to plan each day, but the thing is like, I definitely get that like I don't think my whole life should be structured, and I definitely don't take the method of planning that's like at 2 o'clock I will do this until 3 o'clock and like that kind of method. But I think definitely learning to schedule your life a little bit and have it be slightly less natural is definitely like time management is a very important thing, especially in balancing your own life, but especially in balancing languages along with your own life. So time management,
Definitely.
yes.
Totally. I found when I first started doing time management, it was like it was at the end of 10th grade for me in high school, and it's when I started doing the bullet journal, which I love as you do. Do you use a journal or any sort of planner actually, Angela?
Um, actually, I have not been doing that, but I did have a calendar where I kind of wrote every day what language I would be
Nice.
focusing on as far as maintaining them, and then I wrote underneath like Korean and Polish and
that's
stuff,
cool.
just to
I
know
like
that
that.
I'd work on them each day. But
Yeah.
I'd like
Uh,
to try that at some point.
Yeah, I've always talked about giving that a shot, but I remember what I did at least when I started Ad One last summer was I literally had an every day for like the entire summer French, doing something in French, and then that bled over to when school started, and I would have my homework assignments and like things I needed to get done and French, and so that was kind of something that I kept going throughout school. Would be having the goal of doing something in a language that day. So whether I have all my assignments for one quarter, or like for that week, and then I'll have like Norwegian on a few days, like do this, and but also this gets complicated when you have like due dates and stuff, and you can't necessarily put a due date on a language because it's not for a class, and so I found that I'd have like an empty box of Norwegian for like 5 days in a row, just because I have school getting in the way. And I definitely think there's something to be said for school getting in the way of language learning, but I think we can also talk about how it almost helps because you do have this structure and you can work it in, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think definitely one thing to just consider when you're trying to balance languages in school is like your priorities. So school is, I think, almost always going to be more of a priority than your language learning. I mean, in some situations it might be a little bit different. I know towards the end of my senior year, I think language learning was almost more of a priority just
Yeah.
because the last few weeks of school for me, because I took basically all AP classes, we'd already taken the exams, but then we had like 3 or 4 weeks left of school. So
I
my
know.
teachers would just have us watch movies or have a study hall almost every day
Mhm.
in class because they were like, there's not much I can do at this point. Like, you graduate in a few weeks. So at that point, I didn't really have much I needed to focus on for school. So language learning was almost more of a priority. But
Mhm.
I know I've had to, since I've started college, the number of credits I was taking and things just kind of made it so that I did not have a ton of time for languages. And so I kind of had to tone down what I was doing. So I think just knowing like where your priorities stand, and then like even within your languages, what your priority is, it kind of helps it so that way even when there are due dates, you kind of know
Mm.
like where you're going to be able to fit languages in, even though they're not as high a priority as maybe like a paper you have to write or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a
Nice.
lot of the advice that I have is, well, in my notes written down and stuff, is kind of just incorporating it into your daily life.
Mhm.
So making it as much of a, I guess it's intentional, but it's also natural in some ways, part of your life as possible. Now, all the tips I have are more college related because in high school I would just go home and do my homework, but then I had time. Whereas
Yeah.
with college, it was like they give you lots of reading. Sometimes we had
Yeah.
ridiculous amounts of pages to read in French and stuff. And yeah, so we would have a lot of homework, we would have lots of work and stuff on top of homework, like actual work, like a job
Mhm.
kind of work.
Mhm.
Yeah, so it's like balancing that, and then if you want to stay healthy, trying
Oh,
to like get
definitely.
some exercise
Yeah.
and things. But yeah, a lot of the advice I have is more related to college because I think it's more difficult to keep up with languages in college and stuff.
And
I would
that's totally
definitely
fine.
agree, and I
Yeah.
think it's nice that we've got kind of like a mix here. Like you're
Oh, yeah.
definitely you're more into college than I am. I just finished my freshman year, so I
I'm
haven't
just
done a whole
coming
lot
into
of college yet.
I haven't even
Matt
started yet.
has only high school advice,
Yeah.
so I've kind of got high school and college advice, and then you're mainly college. So we've got a nice mix
Mhm.
here, and definitely the advice I'd give to a high school student balancing a language is much different than what I'd give to
Yeah.
a college student. I definitely think it is much harder to balance things in college because, like you said, there's way more work, even with like they say that like AP and IB and all those things, they're like it's college level classes, but I think there's a big
Then
difference
there's
between
college
doing
college classes.
well, I think there's a difference between college level classes spaced out over a year and college
Mm.
level classes where you have like 10 to 15 weeks to
Yeah.
cram all the material in.
Mhm.
So I think it definitely becomes a bit more difficult to balance things in college because you only have so much time to do all of
Definitely.
your coursework.
Mhm. No, yeah, it's much more intensive, and that's why high school might lend itself to allowing more time for language learning,
Mhm.
because you do have more downtime. You have assignments due, but they're not you're not given a syllabus where everything's like lined out.
Mhm.
Whereas in college, you actually have an opportunity to move ahead and like keep up with your studies more so, and that's why I'm looking very forward to that. But I do see how college can lend itself to being more study heavy as opposed to allowing for free time of language learning, even though I think both of you guys are involved in a French study of some sort where you have languages kind of involved in your studies. Am I correct in that?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep.
And like whereas for me, I know I will try to involve linguistics, but I am doing something that will involve mainly English. And so involving other languages for me, while it will be a part of my daily life, as you guys were saying, it is very much for me a stress reliever, I think, from the day-to-day work of a school environment. I think I would always use like an opportunity to study as a stress reliever, and that's why I think coming off of school for me, I've been very much like relaxed because I'm happy to have some time for myself, but and that's why the language learning activities I've been doing have been more so watching videos of people speaking and, doing more so passive activities, which it's really easy to fall into the habit of saying, oh, I watched a video, that's the language learning I did today, but how much language are you really learning from that? So yeah, that's where I think I stand right now. If you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, one of my things that I wrote in my notes was that taking a language in school is one way to kind of balance language learning while in school, because then it kind of moves in the priority list, because then it is, well, you've got the due dates, but then also like unless your school or the program you're using to learn this language doesn't do grades, you are getting a grade on it, so you feel like you need to study each day or do all of these assignments, as opposed to when you assign yourself, like, I'd like to do chapter whatever in this book, it becomes a bit more of a pressing matter when a teacher is like, do chapter whatever in this book. And so it becomes a little bit more, plus it works it into your schedule if you have a class to go to. Like I definitely found that I was doing more languages this last semester when I had, I guess technically I had a language class my first semester, but I will admit that I didn't put the most into Hebrew. I did about what I needed, and then that was it. But with French, I was definitely doing a lot of studying for that class and going to class and doing the work and things, and that was a class that was entirely, it was an independent study, so it was actually just me and two other kids speaking French the whole time and working through our textbooks. So, it
so
was
Angela,
like
perk
a
up for a second. You're like, ooh, that
So
sounds interesting.
cool.
Yeah, the French program at my school has been slowly diminishing, and so this year we didn't even have a French class that ran. It was just the three of us hanging out, reading the textbook.
You said there were more
but
people
we got
coming
credit
in, though,
for it, so.
right?
Wow.
More people coming in? I have no idea.
I will be
Possibly.
a person coming in. I'll try to revive it. As you guys
Well,
tried.
the professor said that it kind of goes up and down every few years. So, like, sometimes there's time where there's, like, 30 majors or whatever. But currently, there's 2 majors at the school, and it's me and someone going into their senior year. So it's the two of us. And then the other person is, like, the only French minor at the school. So, yeah, I'm half of the French program at my school right now.
Wow.
Dang.
And I thought we had a small program. We had 6 of us graduating
Oh my
last
gosh.
year. 6 French majors.
Dang.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's a little weird too, because French isn't even like my only major. I'm also a film major, so it's one of those things where even if I'm not even a full French major, so it's a little strange. We don't have the biggest French program currently, but it goes up and down. But still, I found that taking that in school kind of forced me to do a little bit of French that I don't think I would have been doing otherwise, because it became something where I was like, I think I had to get like above a B plus or something in the class in order to have it count towards my French degree, and it was like mandatory because it was advanced French too, so it's like the highest level French or whatever. So I was like, I have to do well in this class. So I think it ended up helping because it forced me to do a lot of studying.
Yeah, and you said you learned a lot from that.
And I ended up gaining a lot because there were so many kind of grammar things that I'd picked up incorrectly throughout my years of French study that then going back and like intensively studying them, like now I know how to use certain like reflexive pronouns and like all this other kind of random stuff that I'm like, I finally understand these things.
So basically, one option to learn a language while in school is to take the language in school. Is that kind of like a thing?
Yeah, and I think you probably found that too this year because originally you were going to do French and Spanish, and then you dropped Spanish and took both French and German in school. And I think you found probably that you ended up doing at least slightly more language than you would have had you not taken French, or do you feel like that wasn't the case?
I totally think so. No, I definitely think so, and I actually, I've talked about my German class before. I won't mention it because it was not my favorite class. I definitely feel like I did more German learning outside of that class, but French learning, I walked into that class and I learned something new every day, and it was such an open and welcoming environment, and anytime like I did something extracurricular, like when I did go to Germany on the program, my French teacher like didn't penalize me at all. She's like, you are out there learning a language, it's this work you missed. We will work it out. And it was like there's an understanding between language learners that's great in academia that like I think it's great because I don't see that in a lot of other subjects. But as far as like learning Norwegian on my free periods, no teacher really understood that, and that's something that I just did for me. And like, you know, I'd sit there with my various notebooks in my backpack, and I'd have Japanese out in one class, and like people would be like, "Whoa, those alphabets! What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I don't know what any of this says. I'm just writing characters." But yeah, so.
I think that's definitely something to be said. That's the one like icky bit about taking a language in school is that it definitely depends on your teacher or professor.
Yeah.
Just because I do know, like, I did more language learning second semester because I was taking French and it was fine. And I know the professor who would have taught that class, and I really like him as a professor, but so I think had it been him as well, it would have worked. But even just with two students, I feel like I gained a lot, especially since they were both juniors. So they'd been at the school for a while and they'd taken other French classes there and had things to offer that I, as a freshman, hadn't really learned or whatever. But first semester, I think I definitely didn't do much language learning at all. And possibly part of that is due to the fact that it was my first semester of college ever. And I also had 22 credits.
Change.
So coming from high school to doing 22 college credits can kind of like mess you up anyway. But I think also maybe had I not been taking the Hebrew class, I probably would have done more language learning because then that is more free time. It's less classes that I was taking. And just because I feel like that class didn't offer a whole lot to me in the way of language learning, and it could be, like you said, you felt like other language learners had that respect for you. My professor wasn't really a language learner. Yeah. She was a native Hebrew speaker who they were like, you know Hebrew, teach the kids. Yeah. And she didn't really have the connection with language learning and language teaching as much as she did with this is my native language. I will pass it on to you somehow.
She seemed to like demotivate you guys. She was like, it's hard, you won't learn it. And it was like, oh.
Yeah, she was also one of those people that was just kind of like, Hebrew is so much harder than English. English speakers can't learn Hebrew. Like, you'll never understand it. And I was like, having learned other languages, so it was just kind of weird. But so I think it definitely depends on the situation, whether it's actually going to help you learn more languages or not. And obviously also it's connected to, does your school offer the languages you're interested in?
Yes.
As well.
That is the worst thing you could say to somebody, though. Right? Oh, it's so hard, you're not going to be able to learn it. I've actually heard that
weird
too.
Class.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh man. I mean,
I think because she was a professor for other things, because she was also like a rabbi, so she taught like a bunch of Jewish studies classes at the school. And I think it was just one of those things where she was like, oh, I'm also from Israel and know Hebrew, so I'll teach Hebrew as well. So she didn't necessarily have like education and experience in teaching Hebrew. Was more so she's like, I'll just offer this class as well because I know Hebrew. But was her Hebrew knowledge when it came to teaching people the best? Maybe not so much.
Definitely.
That stinks because a teacher could really influence students.
Totally.
And if they're kind of on the fence about wanting to continue the language or not, because I'm sure with you guys, if you've had bad teachers, which you just talked about one, if you've had them, you still continue studying anyway because of the joy of learning the language and everything. But if you're on the fence about it and you're like, well, this is something I could be interested in, and then the teacher is not a good one, then those are the people who end up stopping the language they're learning after their 2 years in high school, because I ran into that with so many of my friends and classmates.
It's
it
really
was
unfortunate.
really unfortunate. I was saying it was really unfortunate too, because a lot of people were taking this Hebrew class as like their language gen ed, because my school requires a semester of language. And so I think a lot of these kids were like, oh, I'll take Hebrew as my language gen ed. But then like half our class ended up dropping by the end, which probably the drop rates from that class probably should have been a red flag for me to maybe not take it. But like a lot of kids ended up dropping, or I feel like even the ones who stayed probably wouldn't, like you said, have that like motivation to stick with the language afterwards. So I think it's kind of sad because there is that opportunity for kids that are taking the class just because they have to as a gen ed to be like, oh wait, I actually really like language learning, maybe I'll stick with this in college and then continue to learn languages and be able to use it in the future and in my career and things, but kind of turns people away from it a bit.
It's so weird how language learning has become this like outside activity now. Like you feel like in a world that's becoming more and more modernized, it would be pushed in schools like, oh, language learning is a good thing, and you'd get motivated teachers. But I feel like there's a weird like push away from it, and like almost it's been like, what's the word I want, like not ostracized, you know what I mean, like it's been like pushed to the like outer rims of society, and like language learners are this rarity now. And I mean, there has been like a popularity of it among youth like us, and we see the value in it, and we partake in the study of it because we know we just enjoy it, first of all, and we clearly understand that we need it also, like just for us in our lives, like it's something I think we need, or at least want. And I think I just think it's so weird that schools can have this, that these centers of education can sometimes lack in language, which I feel like would be the biggest proprietor of education, language.
I think it depends on the teacher though, because I think I've come into contact with language teachers that are really passionate about it and do push like this whole, we're becoming a global society, so it's great to know another language so that way you can use it in business or whatever it is you want to do with your life. But then there's also ones that aren't and don't feel like it's that important, and almost kind of make it so that kids do want to drop it after their 2 to 3 years or whatever it is their high school recommends. But I think it's the same for all teachers. Like, I know my sister and I both really don't like math, but she had a math teacher this year that she really enjoyed, and she did really well in math, and she enjoyed math a bit more than she usually would. And I think it's the same where you can have someone teaching you math or science or whatever that makes you enjoy the subject more and makes you almost want to continue it outside of school. Or you could have someone that you're like, ooh, you know, I just want to get through my mandatory, like, however many years of this or however many semesters of this, and then not touch it ever again. So I think it definitely depends on your experience, and I don't know if it's necessarily just languages that are facing that in schools. I think it's just some people are more passionate about being a teacher for their subject, and some people are more passionate about, I don't know, something else that made them become a teacher, as opposed to, like, I want to spread a love of whatever it is that I teach. So
I've experienced that in other subjects as well, actually. Kind of similar to what you explained about your sister in math. I had the same situation where I had a math teacher, and math is not my strong suit whatsoever, but I was in a math class. This was 10th grade in high school, and I did very, very well, actually, because the guy who taught it in such a way that we could understand. And I think he was actually good at his job at teaching and stuff. And I think he liked doing it and liked helping people. And he broke it down so that we could all get it. But there's people who will just teach because that's like, what else do I do with this knowledge? I'm just going to go teach. It's just a job. It's not helping it's not people.
Like a mission to impart people with knowledge. I had this one German teacher who reshaped the way I learned languages, and like it was one of the people that was able to break it down and like make it consumable almost, because just when you have that energy and you have that way to break it down, it becomes so much more approachable. And just that changed the way I think. Like, that was the year I went on the exchange. And I just absolutely fell in love with German, even though I'd been learning it for a few years. It was this one teacher that really like sold me on it. And so, you know, there's definitely something to be said for the method in which it's taught to you, because if it is taught to you by a teacher who's, you know, uninspirational or, you know, makes you want to drop it, it's really unfortunate. And I think it's sad that that's the case with a lot of kids nowadays, is language has become this mundane task that, I mean, luckily we are a part of this polyglot community where we all, enjoy the self-education of languages, and I think that's why we're able to find it as a stress reliever. Like, if someone was to go up to us and say, "Oh, you're stressed. You're worried about something. Oh, do some math problems. Solve these equations." We'd get more stressed, and I think that's just because we're the people that turn to language, and they're people that turn to science and turn to math and English, and so yeah, I think it's definitely it's a niche that needs to be occupied, just much as everything else needs to. So we are who we are, But yeah.
I would agree with that, yeah. And there's one thing I wanted to ask you guys, actually. I know you just graduated high school, so I don't know what it's like or what it was like in your high school, but for both of you, at my school, we had now this is college, not my high school, but at my school, we had outside activities that were required of us for our class. So we had to go to like 10 of them per semester, and we had the option of, so we had it for both Spanish and French. It was a little bit different for each department, but we had the option of French table where you would go and speak French with people during lunchtime for an hour. And the TA was there to guide the discussion, make sure we weren't speaking English to each other or anything like that. But there was that. We had French movie. We had, what was the other one? It was French Cafe. So we would go over to the TA's house and we would play games and speak in French for an hour. And we had to go to a certain number of those. They were offered every week. Oh, and the news was another one. We would talk about current events. And we had those every week. They were offered, and you could just go to them. And even if you finished your 10 that you had to go to in the semester, they were happy to see you go and be interested because, of course, they're being paid to do this, but it's kind of discouraging when no one shows up, which no one really does until the end of the semester. So to be able to have this opportunity to speak with a native speaker and do fun things that kind of relate to life more than what you learn in the classroom, there's always that option too. And I didn't know if you guys had that at your school.
That's so cool. I actually this year was the first time where I think I noticed like I was missing out on a lot of that kind of stuff. Like we don't have any German native speakers at my high school, but one of the teachers speaks. He's mistaken for a native almost every time we go to Germany, and what was it? I approached him and asked him if we could start basically a French cafe, but for German, and we called it Kaffee Klatsch, which is just like coffee chat. And we got some little snacks and drinks, and then I think every Thursday after school we did it for a few consecutive weeks. And we would just invite kids who are passionate about German or just want to, be involved in something. And we did it before the exchange, so kids who were going on the exchange could come and like improve the way they speak and just get a little used to it. And it was really nice. We'd have people show up, and I did it as like a extra project for the program I was in. I needed to do like that's how Polyglot Progress started. Actually, it was the same kind of method. But what was it? I did this, and so we'd get like a little round table of maybe like 6 kids, and it was really cool to see people who are actually passionate come up and speak, and to see that there are people out there who do enjoy it and doing these things that are more like what it is when you speak a language outside the classroom, which is having an actual conversation and not like, my name is this and I come from here and I wear clothes and eat food and like these basic sentences. It actually it gets very complicated very quickly, and I think it's amazing doing things like that. And
yeah, my high school definitely didn't have anything like that. Occasionally, like the French club or French NHS or the Spanish club or whatever would put on like a movie night or something where they'd play some movie that was either in the language or oftentimes just took place in the country. So it wouldn't necessarily even be in the language, to kind of raise money for them, or they do like a crepe sale, I think happened a lot for the French one. Yes. So there weren't really a lot of events, like those were very sparse throughout the year, and usually it wasn't even necessarily a come and practice your language kind of thing. It was more of like a, we need to raise money for our club slash organization, so here's a slightly cultural related event that you can attend to pay us. But my college, it hasn't, well, my film program requires outside activities basically, because we have sort of like every Wednesday night this year we had a movie that we had to attend, and we had to watch it and talk about it, and it was separate from the like cinema studies class that we took, where we would go every week and watch films and talk about them. This was just through our normal film, like what our cinematography professor or something like that. Like another professor would show a film that they wanted us to see, and then we'd have a really brief discussion and then leave, and it was just so that we'd have seen films that they wanted to be able to reference in class and that sort of thing, and just to kind of get us watching more films and stuff. But for French, what we were going to do, since it was an independent study, my professor wanted to start a French coffee hour, because we do have a Spanish coffee hour at my school actually, and I think our Starbucks gives you free drinks if you're there for that, which is cool.
Wow.
Like, I think you can go and
That's
they'll
awesome.
give you like a free coffee or tea or whatever, and then you get to go and practice Spanish. And so he was
So
hoping to
cool.
start up a French coffee hour and make that mandatory for the independent study students, so that way there would be at least 3 kids at the coffee hour, and that way he'd know that we were practicing our French. Although then we ended up meeting a ton and getting all the way through a textbook, and he was like, oh, wow. And we read a novel, too, so he was like, oh, okay, you actually did all this work. But we, never ended up working out, because he was also hoping that there must be native speakers and just other people that know French that want to come, but no one else, I guess, wanted to come to French coffee
What
hour,
about
so
the
it never
Haitian
happened.
dad?
I don't know. He doesn't speak French though either. I don't think.
Oh,
I think he
no.
only speaks Creole.
Oh, man.
but-
That's so cool.
Yeah, so we didn't have a French coffee hour, and then outside of that, I mean, there might be occasional things put on, but really, since our French program is so small at my school, there's not really a lot of people putting on like a French movie night or whatever. And maybe in the future I'd start. And also, since the other French major is now going to be a senior, my school requires senior projects, so you have to
Ooh.
write like a thesis paper or put on a play, or like whatever your major entails and whatever you want to do. You have to do some sort of, usually that's the theater majors, but
culminating
you have to do some sort of culminating thesis project, and
Yeah.
basically then that gets reviewed by a board of professors or whatever that decide if you get to graduate or not, which is terrifying. But
No pressure.
yeah, so I mean, possibly there will be, unless he chooses to write like a thesis paper, which he very well could, but if he decides to do something that's more community oriented, maybe there will be more French activities. Maybe if I decide to do something more community oriented my senior year, there will be French activities on campus. But for now, I'd say there's not much that's mandatory, and well, there's nothing really mandatory, and then there's not a whole ton going on. At my school. It depends though on the class. I was in a French cinema class for a day this semester before
A day.
because my French class, we didn't know if there was even going to be an independent study yet, and so I picked another class to kind of fill in the space just in case. But then the French ended up running, so I had to drop the other class. So I didn't take French cinema, but when I was there, one of the things that she required was she worked on like a French film festival, and so you had to come to the French film festival and watch like a certain number of hours of films, and then you had to volunteer for a certain number of hours there as well. And if you wanted to be like on the board for that festival and help curate films, you could get like extra credit as well. So like being an intern or something too, there were other intern positions you could take to earn extra credit. So that one did have mandatory French usage things required. And so I think it definitely depends on the class, because I think there are a few things that do require some French usage, but surprisingly enough, they're not actually French classes. They're like other classes more related to French culture as opposed to the French language. But I suppose if you know the French language, you get a little more out of it because you get to practice.
Nice. That's really cool.
Yeah.
I really wish like we had you. We were talking before. You said you used to work, or yeah, you used to work at a language resource center.
I did.
Was that through
Yes.
your college?
Yes, it was actually. So that was one of the points I wanted to make. And this ties into another point actually, which Abigail you were talking about a little bit, and so are you, Matt. Actually, both of you were, but the idea of creating your own meetup if it doesn't already exist and stuff. So yes, I did work at a language resource center, and it's cool because it was a place that I discovered in during my freshman year. The French PLA, or peer learning assistant, kind of the tutor, he would have his office hours there, and we would go study there and everything. And it was cool because then I realized there were lots of computer programs and books and stuff that I could check out, like textbooks and things. And they had it for all kinds of languages, so ones that were taught at the school, ones that are no longer taught at the school, but the resources are still there. And it's all free, so it's really, really cool to be able to go do that. And then they even have some kind of like electronic equipment if you want to be making videos and stuff like that, which I think is really neat. Now, it's really small and kind of hidden, so not a lot of people know about it, especially since they took the printer away, because people would go do homework and print their homework out. But now that it's not there, all the newer students, like the freshmen and sophomores of this past school year, they didn't know about the Language Resource Center. So when I told people I work there, they're like, what's that? Which really, really sad, but a lot of schools have them, actually. I was surprised. I didn't even know this school had it because it wasn't advertised when I was doing any tours or anything like that. But I ended up working there. And one of the things that I did to try to promote the center itself, in addition to all its resources, was creating an event, which were mini language workshops. So what I did with that was I got the names of kids who spoke other languages, whether they were from another country and were an international student, or they grew up in the States but spoke another language, or if they spoke a language to a very advanced level and have studied abroad and everything, they know it very, very well, in other words. And so I got their names and had them sign up if they agreed to do this for a week. And after they picked their week, every week you can learn a new language. Like, students could learn a new language taught by these students who signed up to teach. And it was 1 hour once a week, so very low commitment. And it was cool because we had languages like Indonesian, Spanish, Chinese, Japanese, Korean.
That's so cool.
What else did we have? We had German, so French, all kinds of languages. So that was one of the opportunities I had at the Language Resource Center, was to get this thing together. And there was always food involved related to the culture, so that got people coming out and stuff. But yeah, another tip is to just make up your own event or work at a language resource center, because then, or you don't even have to work there. You could just go there, and since you're surrounded by the books and things, you could take your study break and go study a language. So
that's so cool. Dang. Yeah, I really wish I had something like that. Do you know if our school has something like that?
We sort of do, but it's not necessarily a language resource center. So we have a tutoring center. There's a tutoring center, and obviously if you're taking, but that's only, the tutors are only going to be for language courses they offer, so you wouldn't be able to pick up like Indonesian or something. Dang. But we do have apparently in our library, which I didn't know about until like the last few weeks of school, and I still haven't been there, but apparently we have a whole language section in the library somewhere. So there is like a whole section that's books in other languages, which is how I learned about it, because one of the people in my French class was like, oh, I was wandering through the language section and found this book in French. How it looks interesting. How about we do that for the novel we read for the course? And I was like, wait, there's a language section. And like we have like teach yourself books and Pimsleur's and like things like that there as well. So it's not the largest collection of books because we aren't the richest of schools, and the money tends to go towards other things before it goes towards buying random language materials for the library. But it does exist, so you and I can take a journey there once school starts. But
Definitely. We'll do our.
we do have language materials
we
in
could
school.
we could do a college library adventure for instead of
In which you
bookstore.
see like annoyed college students in the background as we're like talking, or like, and then here's this language book, and someone's like trying to write my paper.
That's the other thing. If your school has an online database for the library, one thing I was doing was I was snooping around to see what kinds of books we might have in our library, but they also
Yeah.
have their ebooks listed. And I found ones for Korean that we didn't have on in our library, but they were online. And I didn't even know we had them. But if you
Yeah.
check out your database, you never know what you have.
I have
Yeah, that's
been-
how I learned we had Teach Yourself and stuff, because like I said, I haven't
cool.
made it down to the language section yet. I really haven't explored the library as much as I really should, because
I'll be
there's
there
kind
a
of like
lot.
a main portion of the library that you see, and then you have to like go down into the basement and like come back up to go to this like back part of the library that has all the books in it. Like the books other than ones that people take often. So I haven't been down into like where most of the books are or whatever, because I just have had so many other things going on that I haven't been able to take a day to like explore the library or whatever and go into the basement and all that kind of thing. So I haven't been there, but I was looking around just like, what books do we have? And so I learned that we do have like some Teach Yourself books and some other kind of language materials for random languages, but I haven't checked the ebooks yet, so I'll definitely need to do that.
Something really cool I just found. Abigail, you know I've been searching for my library card everywhere, and then I found it
Yes.
yesterday, and I was able to like access my local library online because I was very interested in just like I do purchase a lot of books, and I'm like I should probably just start using my library more. It first of all support them, and then like save myself some money. That'd be a good thing. And I
Support
wanted to
yourself.
support myself. Yeah, treat myself. I wanted to see what kind of ebooks they had, and so I've been big into Haruki Murakami recently, reading the English translations because I don't know enough Japanese to read him, or any for that matter. And I just type his name, and then some of the first books that come up for the ebooks are in other languages. I see like Spanish and French, and I'm like, I think I even saw Portuguese, and I'm like, this is crazy. And so I'm sure like even my local library might have a whole bunch of language resources that I don't even know about, and even just
They
books
do.
in
We
other
went
languages.
and found your language resources at one point.
That is true, and they still think I haven't returned half that stuff I got. I saw it. It looks like
Oh.
half of that I like owe them $5, and I'm like, I'd return
Oh well,
all
I
those.
think you held them back anyway. You probably still owe the money even though you returned them.
Oh, that could be it.
They probably know
I
you
took
returned
like
still
I
took
took
your
like
money.
children's books in Spanish. I had like these 3 little books I saw, and I was like, they're so cute. I need to borrow those.
Oh, those are helpful though.
They are.
Yeah,
Gotta
they
start
are.
off
I
somewhere.
Mhm.
I actually want to try and go back to my library. I really don't have much time before the trip, but I kind of want to go to my library before the trip and check out some German kids' books because I did sort of early on in my German language learning and I couldn't understand them.
Peppa
And so
Pig.
I'd like to go back
Anyway.
and get those and see how much I know. No, yeah, I was watching Peppa Pig instead. So
Yeah.
I guess that's one way you can balance learning a language with school is like just fun things like reading children's
Fun
books and
things.
stuff.
Your library. I got so many German poetry books from my library. Like they were giving them away, and I found them all. And my librarian was like, "Do you want me to get you a box to like put all these in?" And I was like, "Yes, please." And so I came home with a giant box of just German poetry books, and I was like, I couldn't believe that my school library had these. I'm like, I don't know where they were, ancient and dusty, and it was so.
You
cool.
definitely had a nicer high school library than I
That
did
is also
though.
true.
My
I
high
was
school
fortunate.
library had like maybe 100 books in it. And it was a really sad thing. They sent a letter to my house the other day, like, please donate a book to the library. So at least now they've started to acknowledge that they really don't have any books.
Oh.
I'm tempted to, they said if you call, you can request a specific title. So I'm tempted to like start like a language learning like section at my like old high school library just to see if
Be
someone
the change you want to
use
see
it.
in this world, Abigail.
Yeah, exactly. I think they
That's so
mean
cool.
novels though, because they
I
like
know.
specifically said novels, and I was like, what if I want you to be able to teach yourself another language and further your mind?
It prevents Alzheimer's by a few years. Please.
That's what I read. Yeah.
Yeah, no, same.
Yeah.
I don't know if I agree yet though, because my English has deteriorated so much.
Same. Actually, though.
It's really bad. I didn't realize how bad it was until Abigail was like, "Okay, Matt,
do more things in English. Like, seriously.
It's
I
always
don't think I
others who
said it that
point that
nicely.
out.
I just started making fun of your
Yeah,
English
yeah.
because you.
It was pretty vicious. You were saying?
Oh, I was just saying it's always other people who will point that out
I know.
when you need to practice some more, like even your native language and when you're forgetting things. That's
But
what
then
friends
you-
are for, right?
Then you'll talk to language learners and you all like understand the English Creole that you speak, where it's like you're using other syntaxes and it's just not making sense.
Mm-hmm.
'Cause that's why
I was like last night, Matt and I were speaking English, German, and French to each other, and I was like half awake. I was literally about to go to bed, and I was talking to Matt, and it just started to, as I got more and more tired, it deteriorated more and more and more, and it became like I was using all three languages, and then I used
Oh my
Esperanto at some point, which I haven't spoken in ages, and it just like randomly came through, and Matt was like, "Oh my God, what's happening?"
Yeah, I was really like I was thrown off, and I was like, "You need to go to sleep." But yeah. Oh man.
Sleep affects it a lot, though. That's the other thing. In college, you can't always get that good
Yeah.
night's rest or
Definitely.
anything.
Mm-hmm.
And then it affects how you speak your languages because
Yeah.
you're like on point when you sleep well and everything. It's so
Mhm.
surprising the difference between like sleeping well and then not getting much.
Yeah.
How much of a difference that can make in how you speak a language.
Definitely. Like even when I was abroad this year, if I got a good night's sleep, I would be able to, come back at what my host family was saying to me and, communicate. But if I like just got there or like, didn't get a good night's sleep, I was out all night maybe, I would just like listen to them and be like, yeah. Nine, das ich nein, yeah. And then so I totally agree. Yeah. Yeah, because I'll have
So you guys. Oh, sorry.
Oh, no,
Go
I
ahead.
actually didn't know what I was saying. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say you mentioned Peppa Pig before, and my roommate and
Yes.
I used to watch that together. Even in languages we
Oh.
didn't understand, to try to understand it and
Mhm.
stuff.
Yeah.
But you were talking about doing fun things and watching things like Peppa Pig. Well, I know college is very time consuming and things, so maybe you
Indeed.
feel like, oh, you can't watch an hour long of a Spanish soap opera or a Korean drama or something.
Yeah.
So I found on Netflix Korean dramas where the episodes were only 15 minutes long, and I thought, wow, that's
Yes.
doable. 15
Yes.
minutes is nothing, and it will make you more motivated to study because you're not like, oh, I have to take an hour that I don't have out of
know.
my time.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have just a small chunk of time where you have a short kind of thing to watch and listen and everything. You're still learning just a little bit.
Yeah, I
That's
definitely
so
recommend
cool.
that too, especially because I feel like everyone, even if we don't feel like we have time, everyone in college occasionally has those days where we like binge Netflix. And we probably don't have time for it, but like
You make
somehow
time.
we manage
Somehow
to
it
watch like
happens.
6
It
hours of a
appears.
TV show and like watch a whole season in a day or whatever.
Which
So
I don't think I've ever managed to do that. Watch an entire season of a show in a day.
I haven't gotten to that point either. My sister has managed
Okay,
to
I'm
be one
glad
of
it's
those
not
people
just
that's
me.
like, I watched a whole 10-season show in a week or whatever, and I'm like, okay.
I'm like, I can't do that.
No, neither can I. But what I've found is when I do want to watch TV, something I've tried to do for myself is like if I want to watch Netflix, I've tried to do it in another language or something that will kind of still give me some sort of language or cultural thing. Like even I was watching Jane the Virgin at one point this year, and they speak a good amount of Spanish in it, but the show isn't entirely in Spanish. But it was enough to expose myself to it a little bit, and actually it kind of is what influenced me to then go and study Spanish this summer because I was hearing it enough and I was like, wait, this is really pretty. Like, I want to learn this too, and that sort of thing. So I'd say just kind of incorporating it when you do want to do something fun, because it is nice to occasionally relax in college. So if you're going to read a book or watch a TV show or something, if you can, then doing it in another language is a way to easily keep up with your language studies while also not doing 8 million things outside of school.
Yeah.
Definitely. I have a comedian that I know I talk to you about sometimes, where I realized I just said you, but I pointed to Abigail, but that probably didn't mean anything.
It's the audience.
There's both of you. No, but I have this comedian, this Swiss comedian who speaks German, and I find her absolutely hilarious. And I think, like, comedy in another language is something that like takes a while to grasp, and so the fact that I'm able to understand her sense of humor is something that like I take a little bit of pride in. I'm like, that's cool. You know, the fact that I can like crack up while watching one of her like shows is really cool to me, and you know, I take genuine like enjoyment out of it, and so I'll, you know, just be relaxing for a bit, and you know, I'll just put like on the TV, I'll do like I think the other day I was folding laundry, and I just, you know,
I that's when I watch all my shows. Like, actually, is when I have to do laundry. Like, that's my time to relax, because like I have to fold laundry anyway. I might as well watch like an episode of something on Netflix while I fold it.
Yeah,
so
I
that's
looked on
definitely
YouTube,
a time to do language studies. Is like even just like a Pimsleur or something.
Mm-hmm.
Like a Pimsleur, or watching a show, or listening to music in another language, or listening to an audiobook or something.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's great to do while folding laundry, because you can feel like you're not like making extra time for something, but
yeah,
you're
getting
still doing
something
it.
you need to do done. Definitely. Mm-hmm.
Same with exercising too.
Yes.
Like,
especially if you're not running. If you're running, you could listen. But if you're sitting like on one of those stationary bikes and things, which I would do sometimes, I would be sometimes, you know, sometimes you know, when I could and stuff. But I would be doing memorize lessons and stuff.
That's what I do. I literally do memorize while on the stationary bike, and I taught that to Matt the other day.
Yep.
We went to the gym together, and he was like, walk me through your like workout routine. So I like did it, and I'm like, and now I sit here and do memorize for like 30 minutes.
It's being
He's
productive
like,
in many ways.
All worth it.
It is, and there's also all that science that says that like if you study while exercising, you're more likely to remember it. And I'm not sure how well it works, but I like to think it's working while I'm doing memorize at the gym, because I'm like, I'm gonna remember these German words so well.
Yeah, it was pretty fun. I find that like I'm able to concentrate on something. If it's audible while I'm exercising, I can do something auditory much easier than trying to do something visual while my body's moving. At least that's just for me. But like I knew kids in high school who would go to the gym and study at the same time, or like do readings, and I'm like, how are you moving and doing that?
Yeah, I've done that too, actually, because
I think how.
I didn't really exercise that much while I was at school, but I want to do it this year because I have found that I can do readings. Like, I did it over winter break. I would like go to the gym and bring my like giant 80-page packet or whatever that I had to read. And so it's like one of those things where, because if you are doing something where you're sitting, or if it's something you could like kind of prop up while you're on the treadmill or something, if you're walking, that is, I don't think you could really do it as well while running. But
doing
things that you kind of could do it. Yeah, just anything you could kind of incorporate it with. I think that going to the gym is a good time, and like I think that's the best way to time manage for language learning, is to do it while you need to do something else, as long as it's not like taking away from your language study. But like while you're folding laundry or like working out, something that doesn't really take too much of your mental attention, I think that's a good time to study a language, because it just kind of
maintain it.
Works it into your schedule. Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, keeping a language as something that you hear and then producing it are two different things. And I find that I can totally understand German much better than I can produce it nowadays. And I mean, and I would almost say it's the opposite with French, because like just the way it's spoken like almost confuses me. And then, you know, I'll have times where like I understand everything I hear, and then I'm like, that was a bunch of gibberish. I have no idea what is being said to me. But you know, yeah, it's very much a puzzle, and I find that I need to like put more effort into producing it than understanding it sometimes. Depending on the language, of course. Yeah. Yeah,
I found it interesting. I don't feel like just listening to things helps my speaking. Like, I think it helps my speaking and pronunciation, but I've been surprised. Since I've started teaching English, I've had so many students that have been like, I've listened to podcasts for the past year, but I've never spoken, and now I'm speaking. And they speak like nearly flawlessly, and I'm like, okay. Like, they're like, oh yeah, I just watch TV and like listen to podcasts, and I've never touched a book, and like I've never spoken before, and they're like having a conversation with me, and I'm like, okay.
Wow.
That's crazy. Oh my gosh.
That's not me at all.
No, it's not me at all. I'm like, wow. Like, I talk to them, I'm like, oh, so how do you learn this or whatever, and then they're like, oh, I just listen to stuff, and now I'm starting to speak, and I'm like, okay.
Oh my god.
I'm like, I wish.
Yeah, really. Yeah, I wish.
Oh my
If I could
gosh.
have a superpower, maybe it would be that. But
Yeah.
Yeah, just like
Definitely.
I definitely think it helps, but I don't think I could ever like do it enough that I could just have a conversation after listening for so long.
Yeah. I've always wondered like if I could yeah, again, that's so weird because I could never imagine nowadays learning a language without having some sort of translation into another language that I speak. Like just listening to something or just reading something. I mean, if I had knowledge of a similar language, but like let's say I wanted to learn Mandarin without having any English translations and just have it be taught to me in Mandarin. I feel like I'd need to have somebody sit down with me and like make gestures and stuff until I could start to get like meaning and like it always amazes me when I see people who are able to like learn like that. Again, that's how children learn.
I think part of the difference, though, is I think a lot of these people, even if they didn't necessarily get much out of it, I think a lot of them had English as a language in school when they were
Definitely.
younger.
Yeah.
And even if they didn't necessarily remember anything from it, it probably gave them at least enough of the basics that they could then just listen to things and kind of pick it up.
Mhm.
So I think even if they aren't aware of it, I think because they were exposed to it at such a young age, most of them, because English is such like a big language now throughout the world, I think that's a little bit of the difference, is that it might be a little
Probably, yeah.
easier for someone to just listen to English as opposed to an English learner trying to learn something else.
Definitely. Mm-hmm. I totally
yeah, I
agree.
think another issue is that I'm a hands-on learner, so I have to be
Oh my.
producing it to get better at producing it. I
Yeah.
can't just
Yeah.
hear it. I'm not an auditory learner where I just hear it and I'm like, okay, now I could do it. No, I
Yeah.
have to do
Yeah.
it a billion times. There goes my clock again.
That's okay. That means we've been going for
Well, I
about
guess
an
now we
hour.
know how long we've been recording.
Yeah, I just looked over. It's been an hour and 2 minutes.
Yeah, this thing is very fun. Also annoying at times, but I actually did want to say something else too.
Yeah, go ahead.
So another thing you could do, because we talked a lot about listening to the language and being able to do stuff actively and passively in the sense of you're listening to it, but not so much of producing it. And so one thing I was going to say was meeting up with people at your school who are either native speakers or wanting to learn the language as well. So not necessarily a meeting as in like the Spanish cafe type thing I talked about before, a French cafe, but rather one-on-one meeting together and getting lunch with the person, and then maybe doing half of your lunchtime in English and then the other half in the other language. Because I did that a few times.
So like an in-person language exchange?
Yeah,
Nice.
just like that.
That's really cool. That's really
Yeah,
cool.
and then I guess if you don't have access to that, just doing like a language exchange on italki. Like I know that was part of how Add One Challenge wasn't over when I started school, and that was part of how I kept up with it, was I do lessons during my lunch break. Like on Wednesdays first semester, I had class in the morning, and then I had like 2 hours to eat lunch, and then I had another class in the afternoon. And so basically what I did was I would get lunch, bring it back to my room, and like kind of set up for my lesson. And so I'd kind of take that hour to eat and get set up and stuff, and then I'd spend the other hour doing like an italki lesson, and then I'd go to class. So it was like a nice way to kind of build it in throughout my day. The only downside is that can be a little bit stressful. But I think also, though, that was mainly stressful for me because I can't necessarily, as a college student, afford to have an italki lesson every single day. So I needed to do studying outside of the lesson in order to be more prepared for the next lesson I had. But I think if you're someone that could do maybe free language exchanges or has enough money that you could spend to do more frequent exchanges on italki and almost learn exclusively through that, maybe a teacher that does like visual things and auditory things and like a nice combination of things, that can be a really easy way to block it into your schedule, because you can use a lunch break or right before you go to bed or something. And so the same thing with meeting up with someone at your school, if you have access to someone that you can talk to at your school.
I don't know why, but when you said eating, I remembered that I have a half-eaten banana right here on my desk. So,
Rotting away.
That's fantastic. Because you were like, oh, you're set up so clean, like, look at that lighting. And I'm like, I just remembered there's a banana right there. Nice.
Amazing.
Really professional. All right.
It's okay, everyone needs to eat.
That's true. Do we have anything else that we'd like to say before we close off? Because I feel like we're almost done over here.
I had
have
a
one
few
more
more
thing.
actually.
Then go. I'll sit here, guys. It's all good.
Do you want to go first, or do you want me
Oh,
to?
I guess I'll do one of mine because I have like a few, but I can probably like rapid fire a bunch of them. But one of the things I had is just like I definitely toned down the amount of study that I did this past year because, like I said, I definitely think that the jump from high school to college, the amount of time you have to study a language outside of school definitely changes a bit because there's just more you have to put into college classes. Plus, in college, you usually have to balance like a work, like a job and an internship and possibly other things. Like there's other adult things you have to be doing at the same time. Um, so I think definitely not necessarily giving up on your studying, but toning it down a bit maybe instead of learning 6 languages or something, you stick to maybe one and you just kind of I think setting more realistic goals is a good idea and just setting goals in general because that even though if you don't have a deadline necessarily unless you give yourself one, having goals like oh by the end of the semester I'd like to have learned these grammar points or I want to have gotten through a textbook or I want to be able to have a 10-minute conversation or something. That kind of almost gives you a deadline and an assignment, so it makes it a little bit more of a priority and so it holds you accountable. But I definitely think kind of evaluating how much time you'll have at school, whether it's thinking about what year you are in high school and how much work will come with that. Like, are you going to be taking standardized tests? Are you going to be sending in college applications? Or are you just getting started or that kind of thing? And then, or if you're in college, like evaluating, do I have a job? Do I have an internship? How many credits am I taking? Like, are these really difficult classes or that sort of thing? And just kind of evaluating how much time you'll think you'll have to learn languages and kind of thinking about your schedule and where you'll have time to learn languages. And coming up with goals that kind of fit in that so that way you can balance them all at once.
Definitely. I totally agree. Mm-hmm.
What I was going to say was volunteering, actually, because we had... This surprised me. This was another thing my school didn't really advertise when I was, like, on a tour and everything, but that there's a Hispanic population where my school was. So there was a lot of community service that we were required to do, but... Mm-hmm. You know, if you weren't a Spanish major, you could still get involved in things. But community service within the Spanish community or the Hispanic community, and it allowed you to be able to use that language and help other people at the same time. So there was like a tutoring program after school for elementary school students. There was also this thing called Casa de la Cultura, which was basically tutoring ESL adults, like tutoring adults in ESL.
Ooh, cool.
And there was a bilingual charter school nearby that you were able to have opportunities to work with as well, which was a really, really cool experience. So if there is a community of people who speak another language nearby, whatever, in your town, by your school, whatever, you could always get involved with that too and be using that language and help others.
Totally.
Yeah, we actually have the exact same program at my school. I just didn't necessarily think of it because since my Spanish isn't at a high enough my Spanish is like not even A1. So since it's at not the level that I could be doing anything for the program, I kind of forget that it exists. But we actually do have, it's probably kind of the same exact thing because we also have tutoring students after school, like elementary kids and that sort of thing, helping them with their homework. We have, and I don't know what all the programs are, but it's kind of the same deal where if you are a native Spanish speaker, bilingual with Spanish, or speak it at like a really advanced level, you can come and work for / volunteer for this program and help people with Spanish related things using the language. So it's a great opportunity for you to practice or just get to use a language that maybe you wouldn't since you're in a fairly English speaking place, since most if not all of the classes at the college are taught in English unless they're a foreign language class. So it's a chance for you to get to use the language and then also help other people. So that's actually, I think a lot of colleges probably have that since
that's really cool. I didn't know about that at all. That's really cool.
Yeah, we have it. They'll send you, when you get to school, you'll get emails every few weeks where they're like, come do this for the program. And I'm like, I wish I could, but I don't know enough Spanish to do anything.
I know we have a multicultural society at our school, which nicely enough, is right next to Starbucks. But
Actually, the
so
multicultural center map.
oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know that because I don't go to school there yet. But I went to them when we had like open house for the school because I'm incoming student, and I went up to their like table. They were showing all the like activities on the school, and I was just talking to the lady that worked there, and we were like, yeah, it's mainly the African American community and just the kind of minorities on campus, but like we welcome everybody to come and hang out and do work with us. And I'm like, I'm really interested in that because languages, I'm sure I could involve in that, and so
Yeah, actually, going back to kind of the topic of doing languages in school, even outside of classes necessarily, there's clubs like actually the Multicultural Center you were talking about holds an ASL club. And you basically go and you can learn ASL. Each week they focus on kind of a different topic. And so like one topic will be like weather or something, and you go and they teach you signs for weather, and then there's time for you to like practice. You play games with it, so that way you guys
so
are like
cool.
using the language with each other and stuff. And so I wasn't able to do it either semester because it's a club, so obviously then that's the issue with doing a club instead of a class, is it's not a super big commitment because you can skip meetings, but at the same time it might conflict with your class schedule, which it did both times for me. It was like I had class while the club was running, or I would only be able to make it to like 30 minutes of the club or whatever every night. So I'm hoping to do that this year, but there are things like that you can get involved in with possibly your high school or your college. Or I actually, my high school, I tried to start a languages club.
Really?
But no teacher wanted to pick it up with me. So it didn't end up happening, but I wanted to start because there was a teacher that said she might, but then she never did. But there was like the Spanish club and the French club and those things. And so I wanted to start just a languages club in general where there would be a different language each week, and we'd kind of talk about it and maybe like learn some words or watch a movie in it and that sort of thing. And like just people who are interested in languages could come and talk about languages they were learning or languages they wanted to learn, or if they were a native speaker, they could come and help people or that sort of thing.
That's so cool.
And so, I mean, I think maybe it's something I'd carry over to college and try and get started, because I'm sure there might be more people interested in that kind of thing in a college environment as opposed to a high school environment. And I think it's also a bit easier to start a club in college than it is in high school, because high schools have all those rules, like teachers that sponsor things have to get paid and stuff. So then there's all those kind of weird rules and stuff in high school. But you had to get a certain number of students to sign on and say they'd be part of the club for my high school in order for it to start. So that was the other problem, is there just wasn't that many students that were interested. So it was that, and paired with then the teacher wanted people to come and all that sort of thing. So
yeah.
And then I guess moving on to my last was kind of setting a schedule with like setting a time or setting days that you can work on languages. So whether it's like you say every day during my lunch break I'm going to try and work some study in, or if it's like, oh, I know that I have sports every day of the week except for Thursday and Sunday, then you're like, Thursdays and Sundays I'll study languages, and like kind of giving yourself a time when you know your schedule to work on languages. And then also just making it a habit. Like I definitely haven't been doing it recently, but I did make language learning this habit where I was doing it every single day, even when I was really busy, because I kind of worked out ways that I could still study while having it be something lighter. And that's why I like things like Duolingo, because it's almost kind of like a game, even if you're not getting, like, I don't think you could fully study a language there since it isn't as intensive, but at the same time it's great for those nights where you don't want something that intensive and you just want to kind of absorb some new vocabulary, or maybe just review something you've already learned, or that kind of thing, and it's kind of fun.
Yeah. I just had something I wanted to say to something that you said.
Duolingo?
No, it was right before. I was gonna jump in.
I was talking about setting times and days.
Yes, okay, there we go. Thank you. I had free period every day, third period, and so, I'd have my hour of English and then history, and then I had third period, which basically became another hour of language learning for me that I had within my school day, because I went right from that to German, and then I went right from German to French, so I had like 3 periods of language learning back to back. And, I was able to take breaks if I needed to because, it was something for me. But it was really cool because I had that and it worked into my day. And there were a lot of times I would just take out my book, get my audio out, and then spend like 45 minutes going through and learning something new, which I thought was really cool to be able to learn something of a new language at school without a teacher. It's like, it's kind of, there's a pride in that, I think, but there's also no shame in learning with a teacher, obviously. But like, there's obviously a difference when you do teach yourself something. It's like a humbling experience almost. But yeah, so I can relate with
study
scheduling
halls
it.
are really great too. That kind of is only relevant for if you're in high school. I guess once you get to college, you just have to learn time management.
Yeah.
But with study halls, the other great thing is not only like using that time to learn a language, because then it almost feels like it's a school task too, so it almost feels slightly more important. You're in that like educational environment. It almost feels like another class, even though you're teaching yourself. But the other great thing that I made use of study halls for and stuff is getting your homework out of the way, so then you have all this time in the afternoon when you get home from high school to spend learning a language or doing whatever it is you want to do. And also just other classes similar to that. Like I said, when the end of my senior year, I was able to kind of do things in every class, but also at the beginning of senior year, I needed just one more elective to put in my schedule. And so I took this photography class, but I already had enough photography experience that photography 1 was like very basic, and I kind of slid past all of the like Photoshop things and like learning about things. So I didn't have to do a ton of things in class. I basically got my work done in one period, and then the other like 2 weeks we had to do a project. I just kind of sat there. So I was taking online classes as well. I took like half my classes at my public school and then half my classes online through a different school. So I was kind of enrolled at 2 different schools. But so I would use my photography class to do all of my online art history work. So that way I would have less to do then when I got home, and I could come home, do any other work that I need to do for the day, and then kind of spend my time learning languages. And definitely I learned most of German that I learned in school, since it was an independent study. I learned it because my high school didn't offer German, so this was just me and my teacher self-book, but it was on my transcript as having been an independent study, which is sweet.
Cool. I wish I could have done that.
Yeah, that's another thing high school students see if you can just like list it as an independent study, because then you feel like you have to do things, even though chances are your school won't make you do anything for the independent study. No one ever even checked if I knew German really by the end of the year, but it was on there, so I was like, I have to study German. But yeah, I used my study hall periods for those a lot of the time, and it's a little bit hard if you've got friends in your study hall, because then they want to talk to you and stuff, but I wasn't having that. I like told my friends, I was like, I'm gonna work, and I had luckily friends that understood that, so if I like ran into them in the library, they'd be like, yeah, I need to do my math homework, so we'd just kind of study side by side. But if you've got friends that want to talk during a free period, it can be a little bit difficult.
Definitely. I totally agree.
Yeah, and those are all points.
I would just like drop hints by saying, oh, I'm gonna read you this in Norwegian, and then they'd be like, oh, I see you need to study, okay, I'll go do my thing. So that was how I managed with that.
That's the other thing, trying to balance your friendships and spending time with friends and school and languages.
It's a lot. And even like other interests of yours, like that's something I've had problems with a lot, is trying to balance language learning with like writing or reading or doing other things, breathing. That's a tough one.
I think that's the one place that college does better than high school, is that even though you have more work, usually what you're studying, I mean, this can be different for different people. Some people end up going for a college degree that they feel will make them more money or whatever, but a lot of people go to college and do something that they're passionate about. So something that in high school may not have been offered, like for you, writing, where you have to balance it on the side, but then it's what you're studying in college, so it's already worked into your day. And even though you'll have assignments for it, it's not something you have to balance on top of school anymore. So there's that, which is something that I think, I think that's the one place that college kind of makes it a little bit easier to learn languages, is that if you have an interest other than languages as well that you end up making your college career, then it helps kind of balance those two things a little bit more.
All right. Nice. So do we have any final remarks we'd like to make about language learning and school?
I don't think so.
All right.
Do it. Learn a language. Go to
Learn a
school.
language.
Yeah.
Go to
Cool.
educate
Don't let
yourself.
school stop you, and don't
Yeah.
let languages stop school.
Definitely.
Yeah.
They're both equally dangerous towards the other.
Yeah.
Because I have had times where I've wanted to just stop everything that school wanted of me and to just learn languages. And that is equally as dangerous as wanting to just do school and not learning languages. So I totally think that's a valid point. Definitely. All right. Well, thank you, Angela, for joining us today. Your channel is Passion for Dreaming on YouTube. There will be a link in the description if anybody would like to go see her content. She makes excellent videos on language learning, and she's very informative and insightful. So we definitely recommend you go check her out if you haven't already. And yes, this has been episode 19 of our podcast, and we could try to say it all in sync, if you like.
Oh, we're gonna go for it.
Okay. And remember that practice
Practice.
makes progress.
Makes progress.
Progress.
There we go.
I think that
Nice.
one we messed up.
All right. Thank you.